Hey guys, GWS here again. Here to follow up on a video I made. You can see the title here, The Underbelly of Atheism, A Tale of Two Discords. And I mentioned a man named Ahmed. And I never got to expand upon his story, which is a great thing because this actually does deserve its own video. And it says so much about many different things. So, when I was on Discord with these morons from David Pakman, right, I ran into a person named Ahmed, who was likely coerced into going into the David Pakman secular talk, or David Pakman voice chat, their common room. And I'll never forget it. This guy, he's from Algeria, and he's a Trump supporter. Just think about that for a second. Somebody who's from a country that Trump is trying to travel ban. That is, I believe it's a state sponsor of terror. If not, it's been debated whether or not it should be. Um, and I'll never forget it because he was a Trump supporter, conservative Arab from Algeria. And I was listening to him debate with these left wingers. And it is just amazing to me how Eurocentric liberals can be. So you could think, okay, they're for multiculturalism, right? How could they be Eurocentric? How? Well, I'll never forget it because we were debating a perfect topic for it. Two perfect topics, actually. Um, Climate change and the scramble for Africa and the downfall of that after World War II, where they were forced to give up their land. And we were both talking in sync about how the borders of African nations were split up in order to undermine the ethnic diversity on the continent. And there was a lot I even couldn't get into with them. There were so many million things I could have brought up. But the whole point was, he was arguing that these things were done purposefully to undermine the African people and prevent them from developing. And all they did was just trash him, ad hominem him, and throw him eventually off of the chat. They just threw him off of the chat. I'll never forget it because they were arguing, okay, this happened, it was bad, but it wasn't intentional. Nobody intended for this to happen. And I gotta shake my head because there's a lot of parts of that that are demonstrably incorrect, number one. And number two, just the fact that people are so condescending. It's like when you talk about how people, I was mentioning how people in many African nations, they could live on as little as $1 a day. That's a devastating fact. And Ahmed was with me on that point. We didn't agree on everything. It's like, I think he thought it was more deliberate than I did, but there is a deliberate nature to undermining the ethnic diversity of those provinces. Those provinces, they were all huge for a reason, both in the British Empire and the French Empire, um, as well as how the borders were defined. All these borders such as um, drawing a border based on convenience to a major waterway, such as the ocean, such as a major river like the Congo, such as a large lake, what have you. These borders were not drawn based on ethnic diversity, and it was completely ignored. And what did they argue for? They argued for environmentalism. They argued for third world dependence on first world nations and making that permanent. And this is the Eurocentric, idiotic attitude of the left wing that needs to be exposed, because this is where the problem lies. They could say we love the different cultures, but in reality, all it is we enjoy the different cultures as a clown sideshow so long as they cannot sit upon the world stage. You know, it's like that slideshow. Like, you know, oh, these are some great cultural customs they have. Look at the food they eat, look at the clothes they wear, look at their rituals. You know, it's like the left wing views the third world as some kind of circus sideshow that should not be on the world stage. That's why you have all these treaties. That's why you have all these policies meant to prevent the third world from developing, and or if there is development, then you make them dependent on the first world so that then you can start asking for favors. So this is a huge, huge problem, and it's got to stop. And I'll never forget that, probably for a long time, if not as long as I live, that conversation with him. He was such a good, nice, gentle person, and I felt bad because at the time it was, because we had gotten into a debate before I had with the bully mods of the server, and I believe it was a GMO or an economics debate, but of course, naturally, it always devolves into a series of smears and ad hominem attacks from the left wing. Never fails. So that's where it happened. And then, the discussion, my attitude was more combative because, you know, when you have irresponsible, um, immature refutations of arguments, um, or immature types of condescension where it goes beyond just saying you can't take it seriously. It's just like, you are beyond the level of childish immaturity. You're just being an idiot. You know, like, shoot, I can't think of, like, for example, like just using pejoratives about God or fairies in the sky or stuff like that, like just, and I can understand there's a place for all that if you're an atheist, don't get me wrong. But what I'm talking about is when you're having a debate and you're trying to get to some serious substance, and then all of a sudden you get the discussion quickly derailing into God bashing, even on unrelated topics. Yeah, it's hard not to be combative. And so when I was talking with that Ahmed, it was combative, and it he did not like that. He wanted a nice, honest debate, but they would not give it to him because they were making fun of him, and I was not making fun of him. I was with him, but at the same time, I was a little bit combative and made him uncomfortable as well. But it was just a very, very good experience um, with somebody, and this is proof. This is part of what I talk about, why I am a multiculturalist. And this is where I break with the right wing too, is that, you know, I'd rather live in a Western culture because I was born in a Western culture. There's no denying that. When you live in a Western culture and you're in a Western country, there are certain Western customs, such as, for example, the English language, that should be required on some level of people. At least a good enough understanding to be able to communicate with the governing bodies of this nation. But to say that Western culture is superior in any objective way to any other culture is just flat incorrect. We're not superior. because you find people like this. You find people who completely go against the grain and are very thoughtful, intellectually curious people with their own thoughts, with their own feelings that are dictated by the facts and by their personal experiences. And this is what we need to take from this. But more importantly, we have to get out of this Eurocentric, Euro superior view that our interpretations of morality, our interpretation of sovereignty, our interpretation of all these different things is correct, and that we should be able to impose our will, our values upon the nations of this world. And that's what we got to get away from. Thanks for listening, guys, again, and God bless.